Firstly, I want to do a huge congratulations and shout out to all the DJs that played on the weekend. We have these global 24-hour student live streams and they're massive, man. Like we were averaging 1,000 views all weekend, which in my opinion, that's actually sensational. It really is. But better yet, there's a real feeling of support and community, and there's like massive support in the chat, and all the DJs that are playing, like they're doing really, really well, and they're building experience and confidence, and to see that all come to life, it is really amazing. So thank you for everyone involved in that. Now, today's video goes hand in hand with one I did last week about are you too old to be a DJ? And many people ask for a follow-up on what kind of gear they'd need to start running their own house parties and events. So even though I have done past videos on speakers and the importance of creating atmosphere when you play, both of which I'll link in now because they're very relevant videos, but I thought it wouldn't hurt today to do a best of style video on the perfect setup when you play out. So, okay, now just quickly though, I did also hear many request a video on the mindset to succeed as a DJ. And personally, you know me by now. I love the personal development side of things. So that's definitely in queue for the upcoming weeks. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, like, and comment to help the channel. And also stick around to the end because I have a special announcement for those wanting to build their confidence as a DJ so they feel confident enough to play live, and also how to get in on our community, okay, and get opportunities. It really can open doors. I'm seeing my students get shows as well. It's really big. So, okay, so you're thinking about learning to DJ, or perhaps you already know how to DJ and you want to start throwing some of your own events. So what I'm going to do is, in this video, I'm going to cover setups from cheap to professional and let you know what would be expected from you in regards to the perfect setup when playing at house parties, functions, all the way up until clubs. So, okay, so for house parties, man, I reckon just jump in, get some experience. So you'll probably be okay with whatever you've got. So let's say you've got the DDJ 400. Okay, I'll be honest, that with a couple of medium-sized speakers and a couple of disco lights, it's all you need. And let's say then you're playing and you're finding that you're having some sound problems. So let's say all of a sudden you've got maybe some studio monitors that you've got, and all of a sudden you've got them maxed out at the back and the music's starting to distort and you need more volume. Well, then you can consider upgrading, okay? And I'll be honest, for parties up to like 50 people, you'd probably be okay with an entry-level controller and just some medium-sized speakers. What I mean by medium-sized speakers is, I've got like a couple in like studio monitors in the back, the Pioneer SDJ 50Xs. They hold their own. They're actually pretty good speakers, okay? And they could do a small size party, okay? But then if you were buying speakers, well, if it's for you at home the majority of the time, even you could go up the SDJ 50, 60 or 80Xs, and the Rocket KRKs are also really good. And personally for a small party, even something like this may be okay. But let's say then you're throwing these events and you're like, nah man, studio monitors aren't really going to cut it. That means I would probably, bite the bullet and get some bigger speakers. And the speakers that I personally use, okay, and I love them. If I was doing a house party, a wedding, a function, I even take these sometimes to clubs if the club doesn't have the best sound system. And I love the RCF Art Series, okay, or the RCFs in general. That brand has never done me wrong. And I've had a pair of the RCF 315As for a decade now. Those speakers, man, they are still going strong. They're probably about that big, okay? You've got to get them on stands. They're probably about $1,600 a pair, but man, they have never let me down. And let's say you're using those, okay, and you're playing, you're like, oh my God, you're getting right into it. If you added a subwoofer to that, man, you could actually run parties for pretty much up to 300 people, I think, with, maybe 200 really comfortably. Like that means 2 RCFs, a subwoofer, get a couple of party lights on either side, and that's what I would use. But in saying that though, once you start getting bigger speakers like that and you're starting to push your sound a little bit, you're probably going to want like a controller or a standalone or even club gear or something, but something that has a bigger sound card. Because here's the thing, I'm a big believer that all DJ gear does share the same basic operation. So there's no reason why you can't like learn to become a pro DJ with the DDJ 400 or something small, okay? Because you just learn how to DJ, and I'm all about that in my courses. And that is taking people from controller to club and being able to kind of replicate what you do on a controller on club gear. And I've got a new course actually launched today about that, so I'll talk about that more at the end. The only problem though with the cheap ones, you can get really good on them, but the sound cards, aren't quite as good as the more expensive ones. And what I mean by that is the more expensive controllers, or let's say anything over $1,000, they've got better sound cards, but they also look and feel a little bit more professional. Now with the sound card, that means you can play them loud and it's not going to compromise the sound quality. And I think anything over $1,000, you're going to be okay. But here's the thing, let's say you've got your DDJ 400. Yeah, sure, man, like I said, for your house parties with all your mates, cool, man, get a taste for it, see if you like it, and then you can kind of like upgrade as you need to. But if you turned up to a wedding or even a bar or something and you've got the DDJ 400, not only is the sound card maybe be compromised and it's not going to sound that great, but you're probably also not going to look like maybe not going to be taken that seriously. Let's say someone spent $1,000 on you. They're going to expect you to turn up with some kind of sound system and some kind of like professional looking controller. And the 400, they do say like an ounce of image is worth a ton of performance. And the 400 kind of looks a little bit like a toy. Let's say you're thinking about getting a rig. Honestly, I would probably get a bigger controller, some bigger speakers, and you can have them for the rest of your life. But then the problem is, right, to get a couple of RCFs and stands, or even JBL are a very good brand, and then like a controller, let's say about $1,500, maybe something's good, you're already up at about $3,000. But in saying that, okay, let's say you are playing at bars regularly and doing functions, you could be making $500 a week. And by the way, one good show, you can get asked back again and again and again. And honestly, so that means you can pay it off. So it's kind of like starting a small business. You're putting some money up front, but then you can get repeat work. And I'll be honest, playing as a DJ, it's actually like a lot of fun. So, okay, so yeah, like I'm mentioning, just an overview, you got your startup, just a little controller, just use what you've got. But if you want to start pushing it, maybe spend a little bit more, get some proper speakers. Now, let's say you've been running your own house parties for a while, you've been getting a taste of playing live and you think, you know what, you want to step this up and maybe run your own club event. Now, generally speaking, if you decide to run an event at a venue, the venue should already have a sound system and lighting in place. But let's say the sound system's weak. That's happened to me before. I found a really cool venue, but they had kind of like an old sound system. And what I would do is I'd just take in a couple of RCF speakers and I'd use those speakers as fillers. It kind of takes the pressure off their system a bit. But if you are required to bring in all the sound system, okay, let's say they've got nothing, you may consider hiring a club setup, at least at first, as depending on the size of the venue, you may need multiple high-end speakers and a couple of subwoofers, and to buy that could easily add up to $10,000. Then add to that lighting, and to buy all that as well, like all up, lighting and sound, could cost to buy new $15K, okay? So here's the thing. I would probably, if I was working at that kind of level, I would try and find some kind of sound and lighting operator that would lease out their gear for you. Now, sure, this would normally be the venue's responsibility, but let's say the venue's being difficult, okay? And they didn't want to invest in you or your idea. Let's say they don't know who you are. Then perhaps you could offer that they go halves in leasing the gear, okay? And then let's say they insisted, no, if you want to run your event, you've got to cover the sound and lighting, you've got to cover all the upfront costs. Well then, to be honest, if you really want to work with that venue, I would use that then as a negotiation tip. And let's say you're like, okay, you're going to put in all this effort, you're going to provide all the sound and lighting, but that means you get all the money on the door if you're selling tickets, and perhaps even a percentage of the bar, okay? Because the advantage of a percentage of the bar is you'd normally never get that, but that would be for the venues that are providing a venue that actually have sound and lighting. So if you go find a venue that's empty on a Saturday night, and you're gonna get all these people there and start throwing these really big parties, man, you're entitled to some of their profits, no doubt. So I might go for 10% of the bar, plus you get money on the door. That is, if you're providing everything that they need to run that event. And then the thing is, right, let's say you're hiring something out. Well, it's probably even a lease agreement for a big club setup, and it could cost you perhaps maybe $100 to $200 like a week, okay? For maybe they lock you in for a 3-month contract or something. But what would happen is once you start proving yourself to that venue, then they should really take that over, okay? It's not your responsibility to providing sound and lighting, but in saying that, let's say you're trying to build a venue, you may have to. Okay, so all in all, let's just do a quick roundup, okay? So For small parties, you can use whatever you have and upgrade as needed, okay? For medium-sized parties and for functions, you may be better off with a mid-range controller, and I would say anything over $1,000 should be fine, okay? That means you get a quality sound card, and it kind of looks decent, okay? Then honestly, for medium-sized parties and even house parties, man, I would consider buying a couple of RCF or JBL speakers, okay? They're good brands. And if the parties are for crowds of say 200 plus, you may also consider adding a subwoofer. And beyond that, it can get pretty expensive. So you may look into sound and lighting companies and see what kind of ongoing hire or leases that they have, and try and get the venue to cover it, or if you have to pay for it, you can use that as a negotiation chip to get a better venue deal, okay? So you can make more based on results. Now with lighting, just quickly, the sky really is the limit here, but if you're like me, I just took in something cheap, okay? Let's say I'm doing house parties and private functions. I'd take in a couple of party lights and I'd probably put them on top of each speaker, okay, coming down over the dance floor. Now, here's the thing, if you want to go all out as well, you could add a smoke machine. That would actually be pretty cool. And from there, start adding lights as the party grows. Now, for instance, the next step would be like moving heads and perhaps programming moving heads to a DMX controller. But again, that's moving into what venues should have installed. And if you're just a mobile DJ, you're going to have to consider how many trips you want to be taking to and from the car, as you're going to have to unload and set this all up and then pack it back down again. And in my opinion, that's why you need to charge people for your services. Now, sure, you may love to play, and many of you would happily play for free. I'm sure of that, right? Because it's just the experience. But when you factor in the setup and the pack down, you could use that to negotiate a better deal for yourself. And ideally, let's say you become a resident at the venue or at the bar, or you're doing regular function work with those people, you may be able to leave your gear there, right? Or the venue can look into incorporating speakers and lighting especially for you, which would be ideal, as it means you can just turn up and play and you don't have to do the whole setup. But again, you may have to prove yourself first before they consider taking on the extra expense. So if you're making them a lot of money, you're in a better position to negotiate. So for me personally, I had 2 RCFs with 2 speaker stands, a mid-range controller, had 2 party lights. So realistically, for a setup like that, it could cost you like $3,000 to $4,000 again. But again, like I mentioned, you could walk away with $500 per party. And once the word spreads, the gear may have paid for itself within a few months. Okay, now I'd be keen to know what you all use personally, okay, in the comments. And perhaps you can all help one another, okay? You might have better ideas than me. But in saying that, if you are considering getting yourself like a rig good enough to play like, good sized parties, try not to overthink it. Basically, consider your goals and have some room for growth, as buying cheap, in my experience, may result in a much needed upgrade down the track. Okay, hopefully that helped. Okay, so announcement time. Okay. After 3 months of hard work, I've released our new Controller to Club course with the goal of helping people master their DJ controller and then be able to take the jump from controller to club gear with effortless ease. Now it's on sale this opening week, so jump on that, as in my opinion, the bonuses alone are easily worth the course fee like 1,000 times over. And with over 70 videos in the course, I'm going to help you to transform the way you play, no matter what gear you have or genre that you specialize in the first hour. It's actually really cool. Now, I honestly feel this is my best work to date. I'm honestly so proud of what I've created here, as I know it has the potential to change the way you play in a very short period of time, and it's going to provide a constant source of inspiration for you. So if you like the way I teach, and let's say you're only familiar with my free stuff, then I can safely say you ain't seen nothing yet. And couple this course with feedback on mixes from me, live streaming opportunities, this honestly becomes a no-brainer. So I'm going to link that in below. So I suggest you move on that quickly, as it's currently half price. Okay, I'm going to build momentum on it. It's really big. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and welcome to the Club Ready Tribe.